Welcome back to today's explainer. So, have you ever wondered what would actually happen if universal basic income basically collided head-on with hardcore climate laws? Well, today, we're diving into a deeply detailed, highly theoretical blueprint for a completely reimagined society. We're going to be exploring the split economy model. It's this concept for an ecological technocracy that operates under a really fascinating dual-tier framework. Now, the ultimate goal of this meticulously balanced blueprint is to completely eliminate financial anxiety from human survival, all while using a highly controlled luxury token system and a social credit infrastructure to keep our planetary boundaries in check. It is a wildly interesting look at how a society might literally decouple survival from money.
All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the split economy model, move on to strivers versus the basics, look at strict environmental budgets, then access over private ownership, and we'll wrap the whole thing up with this social credit quota. Let's get right into it.
Okay, Layer 1, the split economy model, focusing on macroeconomics and governance.
So, picture this. At the very top of this system, you have a powerful central democratic government and its central state treasury. Now, this treasury holds a strict absolute monopoly on printing and issuing the society's luxury currency, which it only uses to pay citizens for their hourly labor. It fuels what's called a dual-loop economy. On one side, you have the survival loop. This covers the absolute basics: food, housing, healthcare, basic infrastructure. And here's the kicker. In this loop, money literally does not exist. Survival is a guaranteed public right, managed purely through resource counting and ecological availability. But on the flip side, we have the luxury loop. This is a totally parallel economy where that state-issued currency circulates strictly to manage non-essential goods and high-end services.
Now, inside that luxury loop, private luxury organizations cannot mint their own currency, and they are kept on a super tight leash. They have to operate within these incredibly strict state guidelines. If a company violates those regulations or, say, attempts to cheat an environmental audit, the consequences are severe and instantaneous. The government instantly freezes their accounts and shuts them down completely. One strike and you're out. There are no loopholes, no golden parachutes.
Moving right along to part 2, strivers versus the basics. Let's talk about the social classes.
So, who actually lives in this theoretical world? Well, it's pretty wild because social status is completely disconnected from just, surviving. Instead, your status is based entirely on how you choose to spend your time and your access to luxury. You essentially have two completely distinct civic paths. First, we have the basics. These are citizens who legally choose to refuse official labor entirely. They're entitled to live comfortably forever on free, state-provided essentials. We're talking standard housing, balanced nutrition, healthcare, basic digital entertainment. On the other path, we have the strivers. These folks actively volunteer for hourly labor in essential sectors, like agriculture, utilities, heavy maintenance, and they do it specifically to earn those luxury tokens we talked about earlier.
But you're probably thinking, and it's a totally fair question, if basic survival is 100% free and guaranteed, who on earth is actually doing the heavy lifting? Like, why would anyone work a hard job if they literally don't have to?
Well, it all comes down to systemic balance. You see, the entire machine relies completely on the strivers to power the infrastructure. It's their physical effort that keeps the free survival system running for absolutely everyone else, including the basics. It turns out that innate human desire for status, or, wanting to drive a really nice car, is the ultimate engine that motivates the strivers to get up and do the vital, gritty work that sustains the whole society.
All right, part 3, strict environmental budgets, or what they call the three-tier gatekeeper. To actually protect the planet while still providing all these goods, this system relies really heavily on this concept of the ecological surplus. By definition, this is the ecological headroom that's left over only after the state has fulfilled 100% of the population's baseline survival needs. Before any luxury organization is even allowed to open its doors, it has to secure a portion of this specific surplus just to operate. If there's no surplus, there's no new luxury production. It's a hard, non-negotiable mathematical limit based entirely on nature.
And to actually get a piece of that surplus, businesses are up against 3 absolute hard caps, which basically act as the physical laws of this technocracy. First, you've got the carbon budget, which places hard ceilings on atmospheric emissions and greenhouse gases. Second, the resource budget, which implements super strict caps on physically extracting and using raw materials like metals, timber, and rare earth minerals. And third, the ecological budget, ensuring absolute protections for things like biodiversity, water tables, and topsoil health.
Which brings us to part 4, access over private ownership. It's time to completely rethink property.
Because think about it, to actually survive and maintain a luxury economy under those intensely strict ecological caps we just talked about, this blueprint has to completely abandon the whole concept of private property for luxury goods. The math simply does not allow everyone to own everything. Instead, society shifts entirely to shared pools. Citizens don't permanently buy sports cars or designer fashion or the newest premium tech. Instead, they use their earned luxury currency to rent items, subscribe to premium services, and book specific time slots to use physical luxury goods. It's an entire ecosystem based purely on shared utility.
And because these luxury companies actually retain ownership of their products rather than selling them off, the incentives totally flip. Planned obsolescence? Completely gone. Gone. Imagine an iPhone designed to last 50 years. They literally have to build things to be hyper-durable and infinitely upgradable just to avoid triggering resource budget penalties for constantly manufacturing replacements.
So where do you actually go to get this stuff? Well, cities feature these massive, centralized, state-run facilities. The model actually refers to them as sharing cathedrals. These regional luxury hubs are where citizens go to pick up and return items. And behind the scenes, these goods are meticulously maintained by highly paid striver technicians. That ensures the products last for generations, which keeps that economic loop we discussed earlier in constant motion.
But wait, here's a massive logistical puzzle. Since money alone can't just magically create more luxury goods under a strict ecological cap, you are absolutely going to hit booking bottlenecks. I mean, everyone might have tokens, but there are only so many luxury cars or premium venue slots available on a Friday night, right? So, who gets access?
And that leads us right into our final section, number 5, the social credit quota, and how we actually manage luxury access.
So to handle those inevitable traffic jams, this society uses a mandatory quota that is heavily tied to a social credit score. When it comes to venue allocation and getting luxury access, exactly 80% of the capacity is reserved for the striver pool, and the remaining 20% is reserved for the basic pool. This precise mathematical split is engineered to prevent labor strikes by rewarding the people who work while still rewarding civic virtue for those who don't.
Let's break down how these two groups actually get through the door. For the strivers, who hold that 80% of the access, they face what's called the token gate. They spend their hard-earned tokens to book experiences. Now, if there's a peak hour bottleneck, their social credit score kicks in as the tiebreaker. This keeps the striver labor unions happy by making sure the workers get the vast majority of the rewards. But for the basics, who hold the remaining 20%, they go through the virtue gate. They get access to world-class luxury completely for free. But, and it's a big but, they have to compete aggressively against other basics through a social credit lottery to win that access. Think of it kind of like the Hunger Games, but for Friday night dinner reservations.
Okay, so how do you actually build this super important social credit score? Well, citizens earn points through excellent stewardship of the shared items they rent, maintaining a really low personal carbon footprint, and through active civic volunteering, stuff like elder care or maintaining public parks. On the flip side, they lose points for resource abuse, antisocial behavior, or doing anything to disrupt those highly regulated booking queues.
Ultimately, the source material sums up the goal of all this with one perfect phrase: societal harmony. The whole idea is that luxury spaces become these culturally integrated melting pots. By structuring it this way, strivers don't look over at the basics with pure resentment. Why? Because the basics sitting right next to them in those luxury spaces are literally the absolute best of the best community servants. They've earned their seats through intense, verifiable civic virtue.
Which honestly leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. Could a perfectly engineered system like this, one that so heavily balances civic virtue with hard labor and strict ecological limits, actually eliminate societal resentment? Or by quantifying virtue and labor so rigidly, does it just create totally new, unforeseen divides? It's a really striking blueprint for the future, for sure, and definitely one that makes you completely rethink how we value time, work, and our planet's resources. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the systems around us.